Greetings, space travelers. The GM has not returned from their journey in the Asterano Omega Nebula with the Green Lantern planet. So session's canceled until they get back. Do with that what you will.
yeah. The DM's just going to spend time with Mogo, the sentient Green Lantern planet.
The sentient Green Lantern planet. And no, if anyone's curious, we're not going to extrapolate. If you want to know the answer, you can ask in the comments.
Yeah. Ask about the Green Lanterns in the comments so I can tell you about my favorite Green Lantern.
Yeah, so Isaiah can rant about Sodom Yacht.
Sodom Yacht, the best fucking lantern, baby.
Oh, you'll get an essay. Anyway.
I do you remember, turn your mind back, Josh, to like 4 years ago while I was reading the Brightest Day and Blackest Night storyline. I'm like, nah, fuck Hal Jordan. My favorite Green Lantern, Sodom Yacht. And your exact words were, who the fuck is that?
In my defense, or in your defense, in somebody's defense, I don't know a lot about the Green Lanterns or the Lanterns in general in DC. I'm not very DC knowledgeable, so I'm not the kind of person who would know anyway.
I'm gonna be honest, most DC fans do not know who Sodom Yacht is.
Don't know who the fuck Sodom Yacht
Hal Jordan,
is.
Guy Gardner, Kilowog. You know, you're like, oh, okay, I know those guys. Sinestro, I know that guy. And then you're like, nah, Sodom Yacht's my boy. And they're like, who?
Literally. Ooh. Anyway, we're not here to talk about DC Comics. We're here to talk about space.
Or space.
Hey.
Fucking Tim Curry.
I'm glad you picked up what I was putting down there.
I fucking love Command and Conquer too.
That's good. That's good. And then you think about Rocky Horror Picture Show and your brain is like, hey, that's confusing.
Dude, I want to watch Rocky Horror so bad.
Two very different incarnations. Anyway, we can do this. Stay on time. We got a lot to get through.
It's gonna happen.
Let's go.
Good luck.
Before we fly into space, you have to hit the follow or subscribe button or the ship doesn't launch. So hit it. Hit the button now. Hit the button now.
Oh no, is this the Kerbal Space Program?
Oh God. I sure hope not, because that means we're all gonna fucking die horribly. Speaking of spaceships, though, we left off on spaceships last time. If you're listening to this and you didn't listen to the previous episode, you should probably go listen to the previous episode, because we gave you the other half of the context of this game. And we're gonna do the GM half of things. Sorta. We're starting with spaceships, which is still kind of player side, because we didn't quite finish and we wanted to give spaceships its own time, because spaceships are kind of important in the flying around space sandbox game. So here we are.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with spaceships. I had to like start skimming it because there was a lot going on.
Yes. I mean, I don't know what you expected. So
it's not that I didn't expect it to be long, but once again, the writer for this game just really like emphasis on writer. He just likes to write. It's like,
yes, he just likes to write things. Absolutely. Just writes.
Yeah.
He was a librarian for a long time, so that might still be
so much sense. I love the idea of I'm sorry, what is this person's name? I feel so
Kevin
bad
Crawford.
Like, yeah, Kevin Crawford. I just feel like he'll hand in a draft of a game, and his editor will just send him back an email with no subject line and the words, "What the fuck."
Yes. Fun fact. If I remember correctly, by the way, this is some stupid nerd lore. The reason that his company is called Sin Nomine Publishing is because Sin Nomine means without name. And I guess if you're categorizing, it's most commonly used in the context of publishing and bibliographical listings, such as library catalogs, to signify that the publisher or distributor of a listed work is unknown or not printed or not specified in the work. So that's the joke. Sin Nomine Publishing. There is no publisher. It's a super deep nerd library joke he made. That's why it's called Sin Nomine Publishing.
That is such deep nerd lore, bro.
Yes.
That is great.
Yes. Bro is deep nerd sauce. So deep. Anyway, that's the kind of dude he is, to give you an idea.
That's like fucking. This is a Game Grumps joke where at one point Dan calls someone a polynigmion, and it's like when he's like, what is that? It's like, that is the I believe it's not real, but like it's the definition of a mathematic waste of space.
Yeah. Anyway, ships. We're talking about, so as a brief reminder, we're talking about the game Stars Without Number. Without number, no S. It's not without numbers, as much as I always want to say it. It's Stars Without Number, as in uncountable. It is a sci-fi space OSR game that is primarily focused around making a big sandbox style of play. All right. That's all the recap you're getting. So, ships, spaceships, what are we doing here? The spaceship section. Shit's dense. There's a lot going on here. It's a lot of pages. I didn't count, but it's a lot of pages.
I got you. It's
okay.
Page 93 to God damn 121.
Yeah. There's a lot of tables and stuff in there too, but yeah. So anyway, so it's almost 30 pages or so. So we start the ship section. Ooh, that's a tough one. With just some like world building stuff, and like how common ships are and how to handle like piracy and navies in your game. Worth pointing out that this game is kind of a post-apocalypse. And what I mean by that is a post-apocalypse means the apocalypse happened a while ago, and everything is still really shitty because nobody has like gotten their shit together. Post-apocalypse means the apocalypse happened a long time ago, but there's been enough time from point A to point B that society has rebuilt itself to some facsimile of like functioning the way it was before, presumably with some degree of lost information or tech or whatever. So the idea with this game is that starships are actually not super common, and most planets do not have like massive navies. Like a planetary navy could be a small handful of patrol boats, right? It's not like you know, an individual planet has like 100 ships on call at any point in time. So that's kind of the idea there. And
I thought that was interesting.
Yes.
Just because if you think about it, like a TL4 world, not having, like, you wouldn't even necessarily need a full-on navy, right? You don't need like a full-on like armed force. But the fact that it's like, they say a corvette and half a dozen patrol boats, yeah. That seems kind of unlikely. I understand why it's the case.
That's a poor world, though, to keep in mind.
Fair enough. So an average world has a cruiser, 4 corvettes, or heavy frigates, 10 patrol boats. Even that still feels like not much.
It's not that many, no. But you also have to keep in mind that, and we'll get into that when we get into travel, but traveling is more like Age of Sail. It's not Star Wars hyper jumps, right?
True.
So that affects the situation too. But yes, so the idea is essentially ships are not insanely common. They're common enough that people know what a spaceship is and shit, but it's not like every planet has hundreds and hundreds of spaceships. So, okay. Building a ship as the players. Basically, it's actually, so the ship rules generally in this game, I would say, are a lot of shit up front. But once you've done the upfront work, pretty easy after that is kind of the basic idea. Right, so you're gonna have to sit down and build another character, which is to say the ship. But once you've done that, playing and utilizing the ship is not that crazy. Especially if you have a game that's not involving a lot of ship combat and it's mostly just the travel, then you really don't need to worry about the ship very much. You know what I'm saying? Makes sense, right? So you build a ship, you start by you pick a hull type, then you pick weapons and fittings, then you decide how many crew members you might have, note down the ship's maintenance cost, and then fill out any derived extra bits on the character sheet. Crew, it's like, it recommends you'll have about 75% of the max crew allowed. On average, a crew member costs 100 credits a day, plus 20 credits for food and stores. PCs are probably not going to charge themselves, so you don't have to account for them, but they do need to eat, so you need to account for that. Basic shit. So a starship hull, which is it's the hull. It's the main body of the ship. I don't know shippy terms, so yeah.
It is the body of the ship, yeah.
The body, yeah, that's the best word I could use. We have a big list. There's a decent list of different hull types. So hulls have a cost, a speed, armor, HP, AC, power, mass, hard points, and then a class type. I mean, most of these, so the cost is how much that motherfucker costs, right? That's pretty easy. Speed is much like when you're using vehicles on the ground. Speed is like a skill modifier. So a ship's speed is added to all pilot skill checks made by the craft's pilot, whether they're in combat or performing other maneuvers. So it's sort of like a stat modifier thing. Distances and stuff, the game doesn't really give a shit about when you're dealing with space combat. So like, it doesn't matter if your ship is X amount of speed and it gets so many squares away or whatever. That's not how you handle space combat. The ship has armor, which is just, if you get hit, you subtract the armor from the hit unless the weapon has armor piercing or whatever. Hit points work the same as a person, as you would expect. Crew is just the minimum number of crew you need and the maximum amount of crew life support that ship can sustain. So a free merchant ship has a minimum crew of 1 and a maximum crew of 6, which is to say you can pilot it with 1 person and you can have up to 6 people. Beyond 6 people, you just don't have the life support necessary to keep all the motherfuckers, breathing. Armor class works the same. Power is the amount of power that the ship can take on and still function. So fittings and weapons will take up, it's a cost, right? You can take up, a weapon takes a certain amount of power that you can use up. Your ship can only hold so many things. Mass is the amount of free mass you have. Mass can be filled with weapons and fittings because stuff on the ship takes mass, but it also accounts for cargo hold. So, if you slap a bunch of shit on your ship and then you have, however, it's, 2 points of mass left over. I forget what the calculation is, but 2 points worth of mass left over, you can stick, however much that would be in weight in the cargo hold. So it is important to keep track of for fittings and also how much you have left over. I believe this did actually come up a few times in my campaign, how much mass the ship had to fit stuff. So, and if you're playing Space Trucker Simulator, obviously mass is going to come up a lot.
Yeah, seriously.
And then you have hard points, which is just how many fucking guns can you stick on that bad boy?
If you hard.
If you hard, you hard, Yug. And then, like I said, we have the class of the ship, which is to say, just the kind of, you have fighters, frigates, cruisers, and capital ships. It's the same as nautical boats, right? Same terminology, roughly, sort of, for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, a hard point is just any fixed location on a ship where you can put a weapon on.
Oh, I was talking about the class typings.
All right, my brain turned off for a second there. I was stuck on if you hard, you hard. I'm not gonna lie.
Good to know it's easy to keep you focused on the wrong thing. I guess. Point being, yes, you have your hard types. You have your hard types. God damn it. You have your hard points. And your ship types, class types. The type of the class doesn't come up that often for the ship, but certain fittings can only go on certain class of ships. You know, it's like something that's meant for a capital ship is just too fucking big to be on like a free merchant ship. You know, shit like that.
Yeah.
And then there's just a big old dick load, just a massive fuck off full page table of shit that you can stick on your ship.
It's frankly insane.
Boarding
Advanced
tubes,
lab,
targeting systems, armory, cargo lighter, cargo space, cryo sleep pods, drive upgrades, drop pods, emission dampeners, exogen bay, extended storage, fuel bunkers, mobility I'm just naming shit on the list. Sensor mass, ship bay for the fighter, ship lockers.
If I'm not gonna lie, if I was playing a game, if I was a player in a Stars campaign, the one thing I would want over anything else is a drop pod.
That's fair. You know what? And just to give you an idea, because someone might be curious, what exactly did any of the fittings do? Obviously, they all do a different thing, but for just an idea, what does a drop pod do? A drop pod are armored and stealth versions of cargo lighters. Cargo lighters like a shuttle ship. These crafts are twice as fast, apply a -3 penalty to tracking and targeting skill checks, and can carry up to 100 troops or passengers. Many are equipped with stored heavy weapons to clear the landing zone and can be treated as fight-capable grav tanks for the purposes of combat. This fitting can be purchased multiple times.
I didn't know that.
Which part?
I didn't even know they were that big. I just thought they were ODST drop pods.
No, it's like a full drop ship.
Right, yeah, so they're closer to like, I mean, they're closer to the Astartes drop pods, but the Astartes ones don't move.
Yes, but yes, I get what you're saying.
Usually you drop them on people.
And then we get a big old list of defenses, some drones, and some polyceramic overlay and point defense lasers and sci-fi words. Defense thingies you could stick on your ship. A blade of whole compartments. Stuff. Armor and stuff. And then weapons. Look at all the weapons. It is worth pointing out for the defenses, there's not the list of defenses is not very large, and that's because it's assumed that civilian ships are not going to have defensive fittings on their ships. So if you have a defensive fit, like if the players have defensive fittings on their ships and they rock up to the dock, they might get questioned a little bit as to why they have augmented plating on their ship.
Yeah, I mean, it's a valid question as to why you've got
extra armor,
like several feet thick ablative plating across your hull. They're like,
yeah,
where the fuck are you going, bud?
Yeah, what you need that for? Hey, that's you looking at them smoothie.
Yeah. You just you communicate back a smoothie, and you just leave them confused as fuck.
Yeah. Then we have our weapon listings. Weapons have an amount of power and, like I said, power and mass that they take up. So, for example, a torpedo launcher costs 3 mass and 10 power, and you can only put it on a frigate or higher class ship. The weapons also have a couple of qualities: ammo, armor piercing, cloud, clumsy, and flak. Ammo count, armor piercing does what it says. Cloud is to say that it's like it's the kind of weapon that sprays like particles and shit that shreds things up or maybe creates like a distraction. Clumsy is it's like an unwieldy weapon that has a long recharge time, and then flak is like a flak cannon, quite literally. There's quite a list of weapons also. Multifocal laser, or perhaps you want a sand thrower, or perhaps a plasma beam, a mag spike array, nuclear missiles, grav cannon.
The nuclear missiles got me fucked up. I'm not even gonna lie.
I mean, yeah. Nuclear missiles useless into ship-to-ship combat or against any other TL4 planet with working nuke snuffers. One of these missiles could still erase an entire Lost World city without such protection.
Yup.
So if you want to just go commit war crimes and genocide a poor you know, TL3 world that really wasn't asking for no shit.
Yeah, they're just like, I am here to declare exterminatus.
Yeah, yes. And then after the weapons, you get some like example starships, which obviously the players could use if they want, but are particularly helpful for as a GM for you to just grab those and use them as NPC ships. So, you know, nice and easy there. Then you can modify and, you know, tune the ship. This works basically the same. I'm not going to go over it because this works pretty much the same, as the equipment mods, except, you know, obviously it's more expensive and you need more people to work on the mods. Can't generally do it with one person unless it's like a small mod or a small, you know, smaller ship. But the general rules is like somebody has to have a fixed skill, they spend the money, they have to, it goes against their maintenance. So like if your ship's engineer modified a couple of guns already and then modifies the ship, those all go into the same pool for their maintenance score. So they have to keep that in mind. You know, like I said, it works basically the same as regular modifying. And then there is, again, example starship mods that you can, you know, there's a list of examples to go from. And you can, of course, slap some extra ones on there if you are so inclined. Then we get to travel.
I was gonna say, I really like that you can just put eternal, like just perpetual energy, like machines on your ship to be like, well, we're never going back to the gas station, sons of bitches. Let's go.
Is that one of the mods?
Eternal reactor fixed to the ship's fuel tanks are replaced with effectively everlasting pre-tech energy cores. It no longer needs to refuel for drills or operation. Cost 5% of hull, 2 components divided by hull class.
Nice.
That's kind of nuts.
Yeah, that's a fun one. So speaking of fueling, let's talk about space travel. So, travel in this game, again, not Star Wars light speed jumps. Much more Age of Sail in terms of moving around space. So getting from planet to planet is not an hour. It's, you know, a couple of days. So your spike drive, you have a ship's, you know, in universe, there's a thing called a spike drive. It's how you drill, you quote unquote drill through space. There's a bunch of lore explaining how, you know, planets are not necessarily physically located, but star maps are instead charts for drilling. And just because a planet is shown next to another planet in the star chart doesn't mean it actually literally is. It could be light years away. It's just it's wormhole stuff, you know, wormholes and that whole concept. It's that kind of idea. So your ship's spike drive rating is how many hexes it can jump in a single, like in one jump. So if you have a drive, if your spike drive is level 2, rating 2, whatever, you can jump from where you are 2 hexes over. You cannot jump to the middle of nothingness. You have to jump to another star system, which is to say, you're like from the player standpoint, if you're looking at the map, your GM will have marked out where the systems are on the map. You cannot jump to an empty hex and then jump to the system. So in universe, this is explained as like, you can't just jump into empty space. You need a gravity well to pull your ship out of spike drive space, basically.
Interesting. So is the assumption that if you do that, if you just go through empty space, that you will go forever, like you're just done?
I don't remember if it says, but the game says you literally can't. Like if you try, if there's a system in your way, you'll get yanked to that system's star probably. And if there's not, I don't know, yeah, maybe you just die in the in the abyss of the spike drive space. I don't know that I don't know if it says specifically, but like mechanically speaking, you literally just can't.
Quote Randy Fellface, it be a bit fucked.
Yeah, pretty much. The game also does recommend that you have to, as a GM, be careful about where you put your star systems, because it means if you put them too far apart, your players just literally can never get there. They just can't reach it, right? If there's a star system that is 7 hexes away from any other star system nearby, your players are never visiting that planet unless you come up with some in-universe bullshit way for them to do that. So
is the farthest transportation less than 7? Like, there's no way to hit 7?
I mean, I just picked a number that is too high. I think it caps out at 6, and most ships could go up to 3.
Oh.
And then there's a feat that you can bump it up 1 additional rating, so you could go up to 4. There's a foci, sorry.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Basically, every time you make a spike drive test to go to another planet or to another star, I keep saying planet, to go to another star system, right? It's not that you're jumping from, to use our actual galaxy, you're not jumping from Earth to Uranus. You're jumping from our solar system to another solar system with other planets and its own star and all that shit. The game recommends that most star systems only have 1 livable planet in them that the players would actually give a shit about. So you're usually only talking about 1 planet, but the idea is that you're jumping to another solar system with a couple of planets floating around. It's just you're going to the 1 planet that actually has people on it. But every time you make your jump, you make an intelligence pilot check. It takes like 30 minutes to do so. The base number is difficulty 7, and then the base number can be modified. There's some, the course is uncharted, for example, adds a +6. The rudders for the course, which is like the map, are 5 years old, add a +2. The rudders are less than a year old, +0. The rudders are less than a month old, -2. And if it goes below, if the final difficulty is 6 or less, the drill is it's just never gonna fail, so you don't need to bother making a check. Most checks, that means, are gonna be difficulty 7, which is not that hard to pass. That being said, if you fuck up, there is a mishap table.
Oh, please.
So, yes.
Just go on. I'm very excited.
You mean you want me to read the whole mishap table? Okay, so if you roll, so it's 3D, you roll 3d6 on the mishap table. At an 18, drill successful on time by blind luck. On a 16 to a 17, the drill is successful, but it takes twice the base time. On a 13 to 16, ship off course, but detected early, make another check. On a 9 to 12, ship off course, spend base time in transit, then make another check. On a 6 to 8, you have a power spike. 1 system disabled until repair. The ship is stuck in transit for full base time before being able to make another pilot chip. If the spike drive fails, treat it as if a 3 were rolled. And a 3 is bad.
Yeah.
A 4 to 5. Keep in mind that your chances of getting 6 or lower on 3d6, pretty low.
Yeah.
You know, it's 3d6. It's curved. The die distribution is curved. 4 to 5. Sheer surge overwhelms internal systems. The ship emerges around star nearest to the drill origin. Around a star, I think that's a typo. 50% chance for each system to be disabled until repaired. If the strike drive is disabled, treat it as if a 3 were rolled. So what happens if you roll a 3, which is to say triple 1s? Catastrophic dimensional energy incursion. Ship emerges around a star within 1d6 hexes of the target destination with the drive and all systems destroyed.
You are crippled.
Yeah.
Hopefully surrounded. Hopefully you're near a planet, because your shit is cooked. It's not moving. It's not flying. You better hope your life support systems still work.
Literally, yes. So now you might say, you might think to yourself, wait a minute, I have to make this check every single time. Yes. Keep in mind, the base difficulty is 7 and you're rolling 2d6, hopefully plus like at least 1. You want your pilot to be a little bit okay at piloting. So unlikely for you to fail. And then if you do fail, unlikely for it to go really, really bad. You're more likely to have like a failure of some, like if you roll on the mishap, something will happen, but it's not something that's like, oh shit, we're super fucked. Basically only one result on the table is, oh shit, we're super fucked.
Yeah,
the other,
that one's bad.
That one's bad, but the other ones are manageable. So yeah. The game does briefly talk about intra-system travel. It's essentially, the game is just like, intra-system travel is completely safe. You don't need to make a check or anything. It just takes time. And a solar system, mechanically, you break it up into regions. So a planet is a region. Fortified arrival zones are regions. A particular pilot's lair in an asteroid belt is a region. So it's just points of interest within that system. And it's basically, the game's like, base travel time for moving inside a region's like 6 hours. Base travel time for moving between regions is like 48 hours. So, if you're going from a planet to another planet, or the asteroid belt's like a 2-day travel. The base travel time is then divided by your ship's spike drive rating. Thus, a ship with a drive 3 could reach another region in the system in only 16 hours. You can try to trim the course to increase your drive rating by 1 by making a pilot check at DC 9. On failure, it actually takes twice as long. So nothing bad can happen to you in terms of intra-system travel. Other than, unless you're on a timer and that's important for some reason. Then we get over to sensors and detections. And detection, whatever. Which is to say, the thing where the submarines, pick each other up on the sonar and go, Captain, we got a guy. This is one of those sections where it feels like the section is maybe bigger than it needs to be honest, because it's a pretty simple system, but it's a lot of words.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely do be thick. It's small section.
Yeah, it's not actually hard. Basically, the idea is that the ships make contested intelligence program checks against each other to try and lock on to each other, because obviously, just like being out in the ocean in real life, you can't, regular vision sight lines are not really easy in space for obvious reasons. We're talking hundreds of miles of distance or whatever. But basically, you make checks against each other, and if the observer, so the person looking, is of a certain type of ship, or like an outpost, for example, they get a bonus or a penalty, depending. Penalty if they're using passive sensors. And then if the target is, for example, if the target is a fighter, you get a +3 modifier because it's easier to spot it. If the target's a capital, you get a +0. Or sorry, that's if you're the target ship trying to hide, my bad. It's easier to hide as a fighter, harder to hide as a capital ship. That kind of basic shit. And then pursuing, basically you chase each other with pilot checks, and the spike drive is the determining modifier to said checks. So if the ship has a drive 2 and versus a ship with a drive 1, obviously the drive 2 ship has a better chance of escaping, but the drive 1 ship could still get away with some good rolls. And keeping in mind that it takes 30 minutes to initiate a spike drive, I think there is a way to do a fast one, but it's dangerous if I remember correctly. But yeah, because it takes that 30 minutes, if you're being chased and you don't get far enough away from the enemy ship and you try to spike drive out, they're just gonna shoot you before you get that chance.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty
capture you, whatever.
This is. It seems like this is like a direct response to the Star Wars trope of like chase them. Oh, sorry, sir, they made a jump to hyperspace. Like it seems like a direct like no, that's stupid. That's not gonna happen.
Also, on top of that, you have to fly to the edge of a region, in order to, or you have to fly to the edge of like the system in order to make the drive jump. So you can't be right next to the planet and then initiate a spike drive. You have to fly far enough away out of the edge of the system so you're away from the gravity of the system to then make the jump. So you have to escape the ship, get to the edge, then do the drive. So if you're getting your ass chased down, it can be a little hard to escape, depending on the situation.
You know what I thought was interesting? I was, you know, I was thinking about this as you were talking, but I also thought about this before. This seems like this would be the perfect system for like a warp gate kind of thing, you know?
What do you mean?
Like, I understand the whole the spike drives, and it's an interesting mechanic, but I almost feel like in my head the system as it is makes more sense for something like a warp gate, you know, like a portal that you fly through, like it kind of like what they have in Cowboy Bebop, right? Where it's like you know, it lets you travel faster than you would otherwise, but it still takes a while, and it can be kind of inaccurate if you don't navigate towards the right end channel of the warp gate, right? You can get sent out at like, oh, we're trying to go to Pluto, and you end up in Mars because you took the wrong turn.
Sure, yeah. Are you just saying remove the spike drive thing and just use gates instead?
No, don't remove it, because it's an interesting idea. It just, this system, as I read it, makes me think that that would fit more. Now, obviously, the spike drives are more interesting, right? The warp gates are just a common thing that's been done a lot. So fair enough for doing your own thing. I appreciate that. And just in my head as I'm reading it, I'm like, like, I feel like warp gates are the answer to this.
I don't know. I kind of like this idea better, to be honest.
Like I said, it is more interesting for sure. And like, if that's what he was going for, like, you know, I just want like a unique thing that hasn't been done before, that kind of plays with some tech that like I thought was a neat idea, then like absolutely go for it. It's just in my head. I don't know. I feel like I may have done it differently. Not that either are bad.
Fair enough. There's a brief little chunk on scanning planets and ships. You can scan each other's ships with some, you know, intelligence programming roles. If you're scanning a planet, you can basically just do it unless there's something that's stopping you. You can get a surveying sensor array fitting to, and I quote, "They can do orbital visual spying accurate enough to read newsprint."
Just, that's kind of crazy.
Hilarious. And then we have maintenance and repair. So basically, most ships have their repair and maintenance done at the shipyard, as you expect. 1 ton of, here we go. 1 ton of cargo space can hold 10,000 credits worth of spare parts. That is if you want to repair it yourself. Any time required, however, is quadrupled, which is to say it's harder to fix the ship yourself. Ship fuel costs a flat 500 credits per load. And fuel, so the game doesn't care about fuel when you're flying from planet to planet. It basically assumes that the ships are efficient enough that that's not a big deal. Fuel is only burned when you make a spike drive jump. And basically, your spike drive has enough fuel for 1 jump. So you make the jump, you refuel, you make another jump. Every 6 months, the ship needs to get maintained. So every ship needs to spend 5% of its total non-crew cost every 6 months in order to pay for basic maintenance. Each ship's period that is skipped applies a -1 penalty to all the ship's skill checks and hit rolls. At -4, the ship gains a 10% chance per month of breaking down entirely until backlog maintenance is repaired.
Bruh, I can't believe my spaceship in my space game needs to get an inspection every 6 months.
Does.
What the fuck is this?
It does, it's true. At a shipyard, this maintenance takes a day for a freighter hull, a week for a frigate or cruiser, and a month for a capital ship. So, yeah. You gotta bring that bitch in for maintenance, and she gotta sit in the shop for a week. You gotta, like, you know.
This is literally like
Hang
the opening
around.
to the first Star Trek movie where they're like, oh God, we're in fucking dry dock for a month now. Can we leave?
Yes, that is, yeah. Weird that they call it dry dock.
Well, it's because you're docking, like, you know, you're in space. There's no water.
There's no water. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's weird that they would still use that phrase.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like just docking works fine. Like it's a docking vessel.
Yeah, I don't know. Repairing, fixing a fixing a ship's hit points can be done at a cost of 1,000 credits per point. With up to the presiding engineer's fixed skill repaired in points each day. So if you have fixed 3, you repair 3 a day, which you might say, that's not very fast. Correct. Repairing the ship takes a while. A disabled system can be jury-rigged to functionality for 1/10 the system costs and 1 day's work per 2,500 credits spent. A jury-rigged system that is disabled again is destroyed. Full repairs of a disabled system cost 1/4 of its original price. Repairs made need during combat do not need to be redone or paid for afterward, as they were performed before the damage could become critical and lasting. So combat. Ship combat. Just out of curiosity, how do you feel about this system of ship combat?
I'm gonna keep it 100 with you, bud.
Okay.
There's a lot in this section.
It's not as dense as it seems.
I did not read all of it.
Okay, well,
It's a lot. I'm sorry.
I promise you it is nowhere near as dense as it looks.
So I read some of the actions. That's kind of the thing that I was like, okay, this is probably the most important. I like the actions a lot. It really harkens back to the Fantasy Flight system that I like so much. And I really like that you're called, what are they called? Command points? Is that what?
Command points, yes.
Yeah. I really like that you can spend them at like the different stations you're at, and there are different stations. You know, you have captains, comms, gunnery station, captain's chair, engineering. I like that a lot. I like that each character feels like they're going to be doing a unique thing. They're not just going to be like, well, I'm the gunner. Like I'm a sniper. What the fuck am I supposed to do? It's like, okay, get on comms.
So yeah, let's. All right, so we're gonna go through here. So. Ship combat begins. You roll initiative just like normal combat. You roll a d8. I believe it's you roll a d8 modified by the int or dex modifier of the pilot. And you take turns. PCs winning ties. A round of ship combat takes about 15 minutes. Expert and warriors can only use their special class abilities to reroll skill checks or ensure automatic hits once per engagement. So that's slightly different from normal combat. The captain decides what order the various departments will act in, and everyone gets to go through the thing. Once everyone's done the thing, your ship's turn is done. For an NPC ship, you don't go through departments. You just have a pool of command points that the NPC ship does because the GM don't need to do all that work.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a little goofy otherwise.
Yes.
It's like, well, now I have to think about how many crew are in doing what. And
Yeah.
Fuck
Yeah,
that's
all that.
a little.
So the crew, your departments are bridge, gunnery, engineer, comms, and captain. Like I said, the captain decides the order. And then once your department is up, your department chooses an action either from your list or the general list. There's a general list of actions, and then there are department-specific actions. The various actions will either spend or generate command points. Like I said, once everyone's done their thing on the ship, next can go. So your bridge is piloting and navigation. Your gunnery is weapons. Engineering is keeping everything working and moving and functioning. Comms is things like sensors, communications, and hacking maneuvers. And then the captain sort of gives everyone orders, directions, and can sort of hand out buffs, essentially. If you do not have enough PCs, which is very likely that you won't have enough PCs, or if you don't want a PC to actually be doing a thing on the ship necessarily, you could just swap in an NPC and then the player can just control them. So like I actually did this in my game where one of the players was not, the players were not on their own personal ship. They were on someone else's ship. So the captain was technically an NPC, but I just had one of the players control the NPC captain like their character. That's it. If you lack the crew of PCs or NPCs, you can double up on positions because every department does have to get filled. Now, if you're, for example, this can be, you know, you could take on all of them. So if you're in a fighter, like a starship fighter, a single person ship, you take on all 5 positions. And so once you do your thing, you have to decide which department you're going to use that turn. So for example, if you have a player who is both the captain and the comms person, when their turn is up, they have to decide, are they going to do a comms turn or a captain turn? You can't do both.
I do really love the idea of being on like a frigate and the rest of the crew are down for the count. So the pilot is just
doing
running
everything
to each desk on the bridge, just like,
yeah. That's not going to go
like
very
also
well.
taking on, he's like taking on roles in like a metaphorical sense. Like he like in the captain's chair, he's like, pilot, hard to board. Aye, captain.
He just runs to the pilot chair and talks to himself.
Exactly.
I got it, boss. I got it. Thank you. He runs back to the chair. Thank you, pilot.
It's like, Mr. Silver, man the guns. Right, Captain Silver.
Right, Captain Silver. Oh my god.
This is my thought now. This is where my brain will be for the rest of this podcast.
Not exactly what I meant by that, but sure.
Yeah, but it's funnier.
Fair enough. You don't have a limit on how many actions you can do. You can do as many actions as you have command points. And there are quite a few actions that cost 0 command points. You might say to yourself, well, isn't that kind of busted? There are limitations on how they function. So, no, as it turns out. But you can do as many things as you have command points for. Once your turn is done, you lose. Once your turn is, sorry, my phone went off for a hot second. It completely distracted me. Once your turn is done, you lose all of your unspent points. So you cannot, you can't bank them for the next turn. Once you get into the actual, shooting, it works the same as ground combat. You roll against an AC, you deal damage, it hit points, all that shit. There's just a couple of small special rules. Like, for example, the warrior can't use their auto dodge ability well in a ship because the warrior can't make the ship dodge better just because they're good at fighting, right?
Yeah, fair.
But they can use their auto hit ability because they can be good with the gun, for example. But yeah, attack rolls and all that work exactly the same as on foot, which is good. That's the thing. The ship combat section seems very dense, but most of the more complicated bits work the same as the rest of the game, so you've already been using them. Once you hit 0 HP, if the ship is a fighter class, it explodes.
It explode.
It explode. That's end of discussion. If it's a larger hull class, it is mortally damaged and in danger of explosion. Explosion? Explosion. In danger of exploding, but the engineer crew can make checks to keep it from exploding in the next, 10 minutes or whatever it is. I think you roll, you make a roll, so it's crippled ships can take no action and will explode within 2d6 minutes unless the chief engineer succeeds on an intelligence fixed skill check against DC 10. If you fail, explosion is imminent. If you succeed, you're not going to blow up, but the ship is still out of commission, obviously. When getting hit by things in ship combat, a special rule that you can do is you can take a crisis. And accepting a crisis is basically, I don't want to take the damage, so instead I'm going to have something bad happen to the ship, but we take no damage, we dodge the hit. You then roll on the crisis table to see what happens. Any department head can choose to accept a crisis, but only once per round. The captain has a couple of special abilities to accept more than one crisis per round, but everyone else gets it once per round. Also, you don't have to agree, and this one's kind of hilarious. You do not have to agree on accepting a crisis. So one of the players can just be like, I'm taking a crisis right now. And the GM goes, okay. And all the players go, no, we don't want a crisis. And the GM goes, nope, someone's taking a crisis. One of the players said you have to take it, so you're taking it. So that's worth keeping in mind.
Yeah, interesting.
And basically the game says, a ship with a crew that doesn't listen to the captain very much and decides to just do things their own way, probably not going to keep that crew member around very long. So
yeah,
that's the general idea of that. Just to give you an idea of the crises. Armor loss, cargo loss, crew lost, engine lock, fuel bleed, haywire systems, hull breach, system damage, target decalibration, VIP imperiled. And then that's the table that you roll on. It's a D10. And then each of the crises has a chunk, a little chunk explaining what happens. Some of them are acute, which means they happen once. And then some of them are continuing, which means they, continue to be a problem until you fix it. When a crisis happens, you have to use the deal with a crisis general action to address the problem with a general DC of 10, but the DC can be modified by the situation, right? Because, perhaps you're leaking fuel and also there's an alien on board trying to eat your face while you're trying to fix the fuel bleed or something. Makes things harder.
Yeah.
Everyone can do the deal with a crisis action because it's a general action, so anyone can help. And basically the game encourages you to say, if the crisis is crew lost, right? Like crew members are down. And the reason the crew members are down is because an alien has busted onto the ship and is attacking them. And the warrior character is like, I'm going to use the deal with the crisis action to go deal with the alien. The game is like, don't just say that the warrior fixed it. Maybe have a little mini combat round to see how the warrior deals with it. So don't treat these as purely mechanical. Do treat them as the fiction implies that, the table implies a certain kind of fiction. Follow that fiction from the table. Don't treat them as just numbers on a sheet. That sort of goes against the point. And then we have all of our combat actions. So the captain, all of the captain's abilities, their captain actions cost 0 command points. So the basic one is just called support department. Choose a department. One action that department takes will require 2 fewer command points. You can do this once per round. The captain can also do Into the Fire or Keep It Together, however. Into the Fire, accept a crew lost crisis and gain your lead skill +1 in command points. You may do this at most once per round. Or Keep It Together, nullify a successful enemy hit and roll a crisis instead. You can do this as an instant action in response to an enemy hit, but you can only do it once per round. So those are some things the captain could do. Obviously, you have the gunnery, fire a weapon, fire all the guns, or target systems, which is sort of like, line up your shot type situation. The engineer can do damage control or boost the engines or emergency repairs. The bridge can try to escape combat, evasive maneuvers, pursue the target. Comms can crash the systems, defend the ECM, which is a sort of counter-attacking thing. On a success, the attacks this any attacks this round by your ship against the any attacks this round by your ship against the target get a hit bonus equal to twice your program skill. So you fuck with their systems. Or Sensor Ghost, DC 9 program check to gain your program as an AC bonus until the next turn. And then the general actions are go above and beyond, deal with a crisis, or do your duty. Do your duty is basic, you generate a command point. Going above and beyond is you make a check to see how you help the ship. If the GM agrees and you succeed, you gain a skill level in command point. You gain your skill level in command points +1. If you fail, -1 command points. So you could try and go above and beyond, and you could maybe fuck it up for everybody.
I really like the do your duty. It's very 40k build.
Yes. My one major... So I did do some ship combat in my game, and this system is fun. The one major issue I had, I found with it, and I don't necessarily know how to fix this problem, is that the players all kind of ended up doing... They all kind of did the same thing every round for a couple... because the situation didn't change very much. So the captain just kept doing support department, right? And then the bridge was like, okay, I'm just going to keep doing do your duty because we're not trying to dodge or we're not trying to escape, and we want the guns to be able to fire. So I'm going to add my command points. The captain added their command points, and then the gunnery person would fire as weapons because, okay, that's what we're trying to do. So sometimes you would get into a situation where you're kind of doing the same thing over and over again, but the idea is that you're all helping each other. So basically what I'm saying is if you're the kind of player who gets bored if you're not getting to do the cool thing every time, you might get a little annoyed with this system.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that being kind of frustrating. Although a part of me feels like this is sort of the proposed problem with Pathfinder, right? Where it's like, well, there's an optimal thing to do.
Yes.
So do it every time, like no reason not to, which I get. That is kind of a pain in the ass, but I also feel like there's a philosophy of, throw your DM a bone and just sort of play to the fun of it. Like, if you feel like you're in danger, then play optimally, but to some degree, just have fun and do the thing.
Yeah, I think that's a fair idea. Like, yes, do the interesting thing, try and make it fun. Try it. I think also this system works particularly well if you lean into the RP of it more, right? If you're the captain, don't just say, I'm going to use the support department action. Instead, be like, all right, gunnery, you got this. Target this area on the ship and make sure if they fire back, like take out their guns on their side, right? And then after you do the role play moment, you go, I'm using support department on the gunnery, right? I think that helps a lot.
Yeah, and like just don't worry about sounding stupid. You're not a naval officer. You're gonna sound stupid. Just have fun.
Just say the thing. It doesn't really matter. Say whatever works, like whatever feels correct.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is ship combat. I told you it's not that dense.
Fair. There's just a lot of shit around the ship combat that, like,
Yeah, it looks
the
denser than it is.
verboseness.
Yes.
Definitely. I was looking at it this morning. I was like, I can't. I have to go to work in like an hour. I'm gonna get lost.
And important thing too is if you just listen to me describe that and you're feeling a little unclear or slightly confused on how it should play out, the game has a big side box thing that is an example of a ship combat scenario, and it's a full page, so like it's a pretty thick one. This game actually has quite a lot of big sidebars to show you how the system should work. There's a lot. I haven't been mentioning them because, you know, it's not interesting necessarily, but they are very useful if you read about the section and get confused and then go, okay, how is this supposed to work? Right? So there's a big sidebar called The Thunder of Guns, and it is about a ship combat scenario. Okay.
Good title.
The Thunder of Guns, yeah.
So we are just skipping History of Space, right?
Yes, so I was just about to say that. I'm not going to go over the History of Space section. So the game does not technically delineate GM section versus player section in any way, but the GM section sort of unofficially starts with the History of Space chapter. And this is what it sounds like. It's sort of the default background setting to the game. The game does not have a setting in the sense that it doesn't tell you a specific sector you need to play in, but there's this background story lore. And I'm not gonna read it all because it's a lot. It's like a little short story basically. But really quickly, I'll just read this first paragraph. The default setting of Stars Without Number is a far future age in which the sprawling, glorious domain of human space has been reduced to a scattering of squabbling powers and long-lost worlds. The ancient domain of humanity has shrunken with the collapse of the psi-power jump gates that once stitched remote regions of the frontier into teeming worlds of the human core. Now, almost 600 years after the catastrophe that ended the golden age of man, new hope rises from the wreckage of a falling empire. So that's what I was saying about the like post-apocalypse.
Yeah, but we also got jump gates.
Yes, I forgot. Yes, but they're jump gates like the Mass Effect jump gates where they jump you really, really fucking far. They're not. The spike drive is going from one solar system to another. The jump gates are going to in like a whole different galaxy or whatever.
Right.
That's kind of the difference. I will say I did read this when I played, or at least I think I read most of it. It's actually pretty good background lore. It's quite cool. If you're the kind of person who likes that kind of shit in your game, it's pretty good. It is interesting. And at the end of it, there is a timeline that's sort of the Cliff Notes version of all the events that timelines out when everything happens on like a year, a yearly scale. Not yearly, but important years that happened. So also quite good. The game canonically takes place in 3200. Is you curious? So yeah. If you are curious, the History of Space section is cool. Yeah.
Maybe I'll give it a shot.
I mean, if for no other reason than to read it as a little just reading for fun to get ideas about world building stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then we get to the beginning of the game, of the GM section, the real beginning of the GM section, sector creation. So you need a map, you need a place, you need a location for your players to play in. It gives you some very basic recommendations on like how big the sector should be and how to utilize the sector best. Consider what kind of sector you're dealing with and like what the planets around in it are like and the systems in the solar systems in it are like, and sort of limit the scope. So the game recommends 21 to 30 worlds, which is a sizable amount. This is where the game starts really heavily with its GM prep advice. And I would basically say the GM prep advice is the place where this game shines the most. He's very good, Mr. Crawford, not the Jeremy kind, is very good at writing GM advice, making it clear, and giving you a organized system to really, like an order of operations to make it go from, oh, GM prep is scary to like, well, I can follow this list, you know? And the GM prepping tools, like the tools that this game gives you to do GM prep stuff, are fucking immaculate. Tables and advice and all this shit, it's good stuff. So it recommends you don't need every detail when you're starting out, right? Just come up with the sector and the systems. You don't need to detail every little system. Only make what you need for the next immediate session. So if you're prepping for a particular system and a planet that your players are going to start on, and you know for a fact they're not going to leave the planet for the next session or two, don't prep, you know, a planet that's 5 hexes away. They're not going to get there. You don't need to worry about that yet. And then also, and this is the most straightforward bit of advice, but like, if you aren't having fun prepping beyond what you need, just stop. Just stop prepping.
That is some good advice, actually.
Yeah. If you're bored, just stop. If you don't immediately need it for the next session, you're done. You're fine. Move on. We play tabletop games for funsies. Let's not forget that, right? For funsies. So, placing your stars, right? Placing your star systems. You roll a d10, and then you add 20. That's how many stars you want. That's how many star systems you want to have. Or you could just choose if you want. Fuck it, knock yourself out. Obviously. Then basically you roll a d8 and a d10 to determine the horizontal and the vertical. There's a hex grid in the back of the book that the d8 and d10 are referring to. Roll that for every planet. That's how you determine where the stars are spaced. But like I said before, do keep in mind you might need to adjust the positions of some of the star systems, because generally a spike drive is going to cap around drive 3, which means they can only go 3 hexes per jump. Don't put everything really far away so that your players can't, you know, travel around the sandbox in the sandbox game. That would be stupid. Don't do that. Then you basically want to give each of your systems a primary world. Again, I mentioned this before. The game is like, you know, the primary world is probably the only world in the system that has people. So don't get crazy about building out other worlds if you don't want to. You know, if you think about our solar system as, you know, on Earth, we have one planet with us on it, right? Earth. So if you were making our system, Earth would be the only one that you would GM prep. You want to give the primary world 2 world tags, which there's going to be some tables I'll mention in a bit. And then you will decide its atmosphere, temperature, biosphere, population, and tech level. These all have tables for you to utilize, and then slap a name and a quick 1-sentence description on that bad boy. That's all you need to get a primary world, like to get a world rolling. You don't need to go any crazier than that, especially if it's not a world the PCs are going to visit soon. You want to mark your politics and your trade routes, which is your polities and your trade routes, which is to say, are some of the star systems culturally or politically connected? You might have a sector where things are not super connected, in which case that's a little more Wild West open season for your PCs, because they can they could, you know, commit war crimes on one star system and then jump to the next one, and then no one would know. My players may or may, huh?
Oh, war crimes. You're so funny.
I mean, you know, my players may or may not have done that.
So many.
Like,
Yeah.
I should have went back and listened to that episode. I didn't, and I kind of regret it. The amount of bullshit your players pull.
I mean, yeah. I can't. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no lie.
There's no lie. Lost my spot in my notes. Okay. So then building out your building out your important world. So if you're like, well, I have my one, I want to do more. Most of the worlds are basically games like most of the worlds are fine as is currently, but the one where the PCs start and their immediate neighbors, you might want to give a little more attention, right? So the world that's 2 hexes away, probably fine. The one that's like right next to them, for whatever reason, maybe give it a little more stuff. He recommends starting with a rough cultural template, which is to say, like, you know, maybe it's Latin American flavored, or maybe it was founded by Russian colonists, or maybe it was an outpost of a Byzantine Empire enthusiast. The culture has doubtless changed drastically since its initial founding, but it gives you a baseline for assigning names and people and places and such. And you don't need to worry, you don't need to stress it being accurate to real life culture because it's the far future. It would probably have changed over time. And you can smash 2 cultures together to make a cool new one. So you could take the Latin America and the Russian and smash them together and be like, what would that look like? Fun world building things.
I just think about Metro.
There's no Latin America really in Metro, but okay.
No, but like, you like drop from the planet and there's a character named Pavel who's like, hey, Chuvak. Like, oh, I know you. I know you.
Sure. Yeah. So then you're going to take the world tags that you rolled for the planet, which I'll get to in a minute. And then you're going to use the E, F, C, T, and P components to flesh out the adventure hooks. And you go, why'd you just say a bunch of letters at me? The tags all have different examples of enemies, friends, complications, things, and places. These are super, super awesome, helpful, good shit, basically. Then lastly, there's a couple of questions, like recommended questions the game has for you to answer to flesh out the world. You don't necessarily have to do them, but they are there. And then you just determine factions and relationships to one another, determine how the planets might be related. You can also determine some of the factions that might be on these planets. 2 or 3 factions is enough to get the ball rolling. This is the first time the game mentions the faction system, which is very important and we'll get to later. But like, you know, don't go crazy at the beginning. 2 or 3 factions is plenty. Honestly, you don't even need to go, like 6 is plenty for a whole campaign, to be honest. And then, okay, so what are so now the world tags. So there is a D100 table. So lots of shit. This D100 table has a whole bunch of crap on it. So I'm just real quick. Can I, hold on, I'm gonna roll a virtual die real quick. Right. Okay, 86. Just to give an example. 86, societal despair. I will now try and, oh God. I had to get a high number. I couldn't have got a low number. Now I'm scrolling. We're scrolling. Trying to get to S's. We are close to the S's. Help me out here, I say. Not even gonna, just gonna leave me hanging. I'm just gonna.
Nope.
Nope, not getting out of this chair.
Nope, not getting out of this chair. It's exactly.
Oh, why did I roll?
This is my revenge for the Smasher Pass, where y'all were just saying words while I was struggling.
Jesus. Okay, societal despair. So this is the tag, and then I'll give you the other, the E, the F, the C, so on. The world's dominant society has lost faith in itself, whether through an all-consuming war, great catastrophe, or overwhelming outside culture. or a religious collapse, the natives no longer believe in their old values and search desperately for something new. Fierce conflict often exists between the last believers in the old dispensation and the nihilistic or searching disciples of the new age. So that's the tag. And then enemies, zealots who blame outsiders for the decay. Nihilistic warlord, off-worlder looking to exploit things. Friends, struggling messengers of a new way. Valiant paragon of a fading tradition, local going through the motions of serving an alley relevant role. C was complications. A massive war discredited all the old values. Outside powers are working to erode societal confidence for their own. A local power is profiting greatly from despair. And then you have T, which is...
I really don't like how close to home that's hitting.
T, which was... Brain. I forget which one T was. But a relic that would inspire a renaissance. Art that... Was it... Which treasure, maybe? Art that would inspire a new renaissance. Priceless artifacts. And then P, places. Empty temple, crowded den of obliviating vice. Smoky hall of frantic speakers. So that one tag with all of those little bits attached was one example. There's a table of 100 of those. So safe to say Homeboy's got you covered in terms of rolling up interesting worlds. And reminder, when you make a world, you're supposed to roll 2 of these tags. So you roll 2 of them and smush them together.
A lot.
So D100 twice. There's a lot of good, juicy shit you can get out of it. And that's what I mean where the GM prep side of this game is thick and meaty and juicy and scrumptious.
Yeah?
Yeah. After the world tags, you have your atmosphere. There's a table to roll for the atmosphere, which is to say like corrosive, inert gas, airless or thin, breathable, thick. Then you have your temperature, which is to say like, is it a real hot planet or a real cold planet or somewhere in the middle? The biosphere, which is like, you know, no native biosphere, emiscable biosphere, hybrid biosphere, engineered biospheres. These also all have descriptions. Like there's the table and then descriptions of what it is. Then you have a population roll to make with a table for that, as well as descriptions of the various amount of populations. And then you have the tech level, which you can roll on. I think the tech level I generally didn't roll on. I think for the tech level, I usually just chose if I wanted what I wanted to plan it to be. And then if I wasn't sure, I would roll. That was kind of my move. Just because tech level is like an important one to deal with, you know?
Yeah, I can see that.
And then you want to add additional points of interest. So you can generally assume only one planet is inhabited per star, but you can add extras if you want. If you do add extras, what is this world's origin? Like, why is there this secondary one? And then you want to determine, there's a table to roll on, which is the world's origin. How do the primary and secondary worlds feel about each other? And then what is their contact like? Contact meaning like, you know, do they trade with each other? Do they have a mutual language? Do they have a shared religion? Shit like that. Then you have another, you have like an adventure hook table to roll on. The adventure, sorry, I was like reading my notes mid-thought. That sounded like I just turned off there.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I know. Actually, I say adventure hook. So like, for example, you roll a D8 and like, then you get, okay, asteroid base. And then you roll a D10 and a D10 to figure out who's at the asteroid base and what's going on with them. So asteroid base with zealous religious secretarians whose life support is threatened, right? So like that's a hook that could be at that point of interest or for that world or whatever.
Wait, what the fuck is a secretarian? Is that
a secretarian? Meaning like zealous secretaries.
I kind of love that.
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of middle-aged white ladies covered in Mad Max war paint trying to hit you with staple guns.
Not exactly how I would describe it, but sure.
Look, that's where my brain went, and that's, as far as I'm aware, that's canon.
If it can be canon in your game.
It's just a base of like 50 or so Gladys and like what the hell is her name from The Office, the old lady?
I didn't watch The Office.
I didn't either. Damn it.
I don't know. Sorry.
I hate everything.
Okay.
I think it is Gladys. Yeah.
It might be. Then of course you can throw in other little points of interest in the, around the world in that system. Stuff that's looser and doesn't need as much fleshing out unless the PCs care, like outposts, fueling stations, space mines, stuff like that. But that's where the table could be handy if there's an asteroid base with the religious secretarians to go help. That's what that's for. Then we roll over into the adventure creation chapter. I'm basically gonna skip over this one. Not because it's bad, it's actually quite good. But it is essentially...
As you say, it's very in-depth.
Yes. It's basically a really big advice column. But like the other advice, all the other GM advice throughout this game, it is a very good advice column. So if you are needing a little assistance on how to create problems and places and people and situations and adventures, this game has you covered on advice of how to go about that. One bit I will focus on though is the reward structure, because that's important. So, in terms of adventure rewards, the game is basically like, don't worry too much about giving your PCs too much money, because they can't do their ability to do things with it is limited. They can't make themselves directly more powerful. They can't turn into godlike space flying wizard warrior god beings. Instead, what'll probably happen, basically the game is like, if your players get ludicrously, fabulously wealthy, it's probably just gonna shift the tone and the focus of the campaign. Before they were trying to get money to pay off their ship. Now they're stupidly wealthy, and all of the local, pirate barons are trying to make a deal with them to get a cut of the money or whatever, right? So like it just sort of shifts. It will shift the tone of the game is probably what'll end up happening. That being said, there's a table that is broken up by monetary amounts that would be reasonable, either reasonable or large sums to various kinds of people. So you're not necessarily rewarding, because this is a sandbox game and your players could potentially do things like your level 3 players could, through some very clever play, pick up a quest from a nobleman on a wealthy planet and then manage to succeed in said quest and get paid handsomely for it, much more than they should be paid for what level they are as characters. Because it's a sandbox game and that sort of shit, they can shoot above their weight class if they want to try. Or below their weight class if they're feeling like they want to go bully some nerds or something. So, as an example, a lot of money to an ordinary worker, 500 credits. An ordinary worker's maximum funds, 1,000 credits. If they're doing an illegal but not serious crime job, maybe 500 credits. If they're doing a serious but non-capital crime job, 1,000 credits. If they're killing someone who's not super important, maybe 5,000 credits. If they kill a significant or well-guarded target, maybe 50,000 credits. If they take a a mission from a wealthy person, they could get paid 25,000 credits. If that wealthy person is paying them a lot of money, they could be paid 100,000 credits. So it's sort of the money amounts they get paid are based on the situation, not necessarily what level they are and what amount of gold should they have based on level and all that other stuff. Because again, we're not doing the D&D level curve, power curve type situation. That is not the objective.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I like the way that they put that. I was curious about how that was divvied up going in, because when you do look at the gear and the pilot stuff, or the vehicle stuff, it gets pretty up there in price. And then you go just looking at the robots, because I was kind of curious about that in a later part, the Zen of Bestiary. It's like, oh, a warbot. How do you get that? 50,000. Okay, what does that look like? Like, how much does that cost? What does that look like?
Yes. And your answer is that would be killing a significantly well-guarded target would be how much that's worth.
Or
50,000 credits.
Committing about 50 felonies.
Yeah, or committing 50 felonies. Which puts into perspective how valuable that item is. Right, which is the important thing. The amounts on the adventure table are not like you have to take them as is, but your players can look at them and understand how valuable something is or is not based roughly on that table, which may or may not influence their decision making. Then we have XP rewards. As I've said many times, XP reward systems in a game are super important to me. I think they should be, well, I think they're important to game design in general, but you know. So, because this is a sandbox game though, they give you a couple of different options for XP rewards that you should choose based on the style of game that you're trying to run. So first you have session-based XP, where you simply award the players a set amount of XP per session, which is, you know, if you want to story it a little bit more. You have personal goal-based XP, which is what I use for my campaign, where the PCs decide on a short-term goal and a long-term goal, and they receive XP for completing their short or long-term. The long-term goal XP is worth roughly 3 times as much as the short-term. So like short-term XP would be 3, long-term XP would be 9. You do mission-based XP, which is basically, mission-based doesn't necessarily mean that the players received a mission from somebody else. It just means that the players agreed on a mission goal of some kind and will get XP once they complete it. So the players could say that our mission is to rob this noble guy's house, and then the GM says, okay, I will note that down as your mission and you will receive XP if you complete that. Or it could be the noble guy gives them a job and the players say, yes, we're going to do it, so that's our mission. You know, it could be either or. Again, sandbox game, so it can go in a lot of different directions in terms of how the players get that juicy XP. You have loot-based leveling, which is where the PCs level up when they accrue a certain amount of liquid assets, which doubles for every level they gain. So it's like, to get to level 2, I think it's 5,000 credits, and then to level 3, you need to get 10,000 credits, and then to 4, it's 20,000, so on and so forth. And then lastly, and this one I think is just funny, you have spending-based XP, where the PCs only level up upon spending their credits, but it can't be on something useful like gear. It has to be somewhat frivolous spending, in a way. So
interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So it says only credits wasted. It uses the word wasted in quotes. Only credits wasted in revelry, charity, supporting an NPC cause, building a power base, or other interactions with the game's world count towards PC advancement. So if your players get a bunch of money and then buy a bunch of guns and ship parts, that's not XP worthy. But if they spend a bunch of money to build a base on a specific planet and then start a cult or something, maybe that would be
or
worth
something,
XP.
Really.
Or something, maybe. Perhaps if they create a new strip club for their strippers at their cult or something, maybe. I don't know why I'd be thinking it. That's a weird example, I know, but you know.
Crazy.
Crazy. Why would that
thunk it?
When would that happen?
Yeah, like what? Strip clubs and cults at the same time? What?
Ow.
Silly.
You silly goofs.
Oh.
Then we get a whole bunch of more random tables.
How many more random tables would there be? More tables.
Yes. You get some random tables to help you create problems, to create people, and to create places. And I don't know if I can really. So like the creating places one, for example, it's a D20 table with 3 columns: the reward, the civilized ongoings, and the wilderness ongoings of the place. And then it has a follow-up table for the adventure hooks at the location. That's a D8 table accompanied by 2 D10 tables. And then there is 100 adventure seeds. So, again, lots. And when I say 100 adventure seeds, they're all like a paragraph, and they're pretty chunky boys. So it's not like a singular sentence or like a singular word or anything like that. It's a full paragraph explaining the adventure seed. So again, just immaculate GM tools up the ass. I don't know how many times I'm going to explain that, but you get my point.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around the fact that there's 100.
100 of them, yes.
D100,
like, baby.
And for those of you who have not read this book, these are not like one sentence entries. These are full paragraphs.
I mean, that is what I just said, yes.
Yes, I'm aware. I just so much writing.
Bro writes.
Yeah.
Bro done writes. And then after all of that, there's a page
real quick. I'm sorry.
Uh-huh.
Because this had me thinking, right?
Yeah.
The Without Number series is, in a way, when you think about it,
uh-huh,
the most optimized game-ready version of Paradox Interactive's World of Darkness games.
I don't know what you mean by that.
So, like, the World of Darkness, I mean, they're better now, right? They are 100% better than they were. But back in the Dizzy, you were like, okay, there's a lot of cool lore. Where are my rules? How do I know what does what and who does where?
Right.
This has a similar thing where there's a lot of lore, there's a lot of information, but you can clearly parse out what is important.
Rules?
Yeah.
Yes.
It is, like I said, an optimized version of Paradox Interactive system.
Okay, I see what you're getting at now. Took me a second on that one. Also, not a comparison I would have expected.
But like, when you have 2 game writers whose whole thing is, yeah, we're basically just writers who put some rules to our writing.
Right, well.
And then one of them went, yeah, but I codified all my shit. And the other one went, well, we had some concepts of rules.
We had some vague ideas of what rules could be. And after all of that adventure creation stuff, there's also a full page example of adventure creation where he walks you through like a hypothetical GM making an adventure. So in case you weren't clear on how to use it, you could also go through that. And then we got the Xenobestiary, with a sick art piece of a giant alien spider thing about to eat 3 poor marine dudes running for their lives.
That actually kind of looks like a Norn queen, like the Tyranid Norn queens.
Don't know what that is, but could be.
I will show you a picture. Please continue.
So the Xenobestiary, the important thing to keep in mind about combat in this game is that the types of enemies in an area should be reasonable, but reasonable to the area doesn't mean they have to be reasonable to the PC's power level. Which is to say, if the PCs go on to an alien planet where they've been told that it is the home of the alien hive queen and her elite monster guards, if they walk in there at level 2, you're not gonna nerf the alien queen so that they can have a reasonable fight. You're just gonna fuck their shit up, fam. Because they shouldn't have been there. Because again, this is the whole sandbox nature of the game. Conversely, if your characters are level 8 or something like that, and they walk on to a backwater, low, asteroid colony with barely any troops to guard it, and they decide to just take the place over and they just absolutely dunk shit on everyone there, they can do that. Because it wouldn't make sense for this random backwater asteroid colony to have like cyber ninja assassins protecting it, right? So that's an important thing to keep in mind when you're dealing with the enemies in the bestiary. It also recommends that you should never ever I guess it does kind of look like a Nornqueed a little bit.
I was wrong. So it's called a Moloch. I just didn't want to interrupt you. That's the Moloch. Yeah, but they do.
Okay, then it kind of looks a little bit like a Moloch. It recommends you should never make combat unavoidable. The PCs should be able to get out of it somehow. Might be hard.
I appreciate this.
Might be very hard, but they should have a method. And the reason is, it's pretty simple. First of all, combat's fucking deadly. So, they don't want to be getting into fights all the time. And there's no reward for combat, right? They don't get anything if they kill something. They just get to survive. So don't put them in unavoidable fights. You as the GM, this game is really not a combat game very much. It's more of a game where you put problems in front of your players and they will decide how they want to get around it. And you could hypothetically have a game where you have 3 or 4 player characters and all of them play experts. So none of them are particularly good at combat and none of them have a high shoot skill or a high stab skill. So they're not going to hit things very often. Those players are going to do everything in their power to never be in a combat situation because they will die horribly. So always leave that door open. Don't put the players in a fight just because you feel like they have to. And that's not to say if you design a boss fight and then the players walk into the boss fight room, should it be difficult for them to avoid the combat? Yeah, you should make it hard because you want them to fight the thing, but it should never be 110% there's only option is fight. Right?
So I actually very much would love to see a campaign where the players are not combat focused, because it just sort of turns out that way, right? Kind of no matter what, based on most people have played D&D first, they're gonna make characters who punch hard, at least one of them. I would like to play in a game where we're just merchants, right? We're playing Rust in space.
I mean, I'll be honest. We definitely had combat in my games because we had a person who made a relatively good combat character, but not a lot of combat. Not a lot. So, yeah.
I feel like I would do pretty well there.
It's
in a
doable.
game like that.
It is very doable with this system.
But yeah, I could see people struggling with that. There's just like an expectation because it's DTRPG that you have to punch something in the face.
Yeah, well, people just assume, people who don't played a lot of other games don't know what their options are. Especially if you only play D&D, you assume that you only have 1 or 2 options that aren't combat, and once those are exhausted, time to draw swords and kill shit.
My players would do amazing here.
Fair enough. So I don't know why this chapter starts with this, but I'm just going in the order. So it talks about how to handling potential combat, and then it goes into the reaction roll. So basically, when your players meet, you don't have to do this every time, but your players meet a creature or a person or whatever, and you roll 2d6 and check against the table, right? The basic idea is that the reaction roll determines the initial disposition when you meet something, but it should still be reasonable to the situation. A roll of friendly on the table doesn't mean the bloodthirsty alien beast wants to be the team's new pet, but it might mean that he's currently full from a meal and doesn't attack them immediately, right? So take into account, because the table literally says, like, if you roll friendly, helpful as is plausible to be, right? So if it's the xenomorph queen, she's not going to help the players. She's not their new friend, but maybe she pauses for 5 seconds and doesn't immediately cover them in stomach acid or whatever. Spits acid or whatever the fuck she does. Whatever xenomorphs be doing these days.
That's a good question.
I don't know.
God, the Alien franchise is so fucking convoluted now.
It's gotten, yeah.
I could go on the 20-minute diatribe as to what's going on. I won't, but I could.
Yeah, no, now is not the time. So the Xenobestiary, we get basic human stat blocks and some general advice on how to use humans as NPC enemies. Not every human that the players run into is going to have a penchant for violence. In fact, most of the people the players run into are just people. So if your players decide to start just popping shots into people, they will just start killing dudes left and right like crazy. It's going back to that sandbox nature. It's not assumed that the players are going to run into an equivalent fight just because of their level or where they're at. NPC stat blocks are very, very simplified relative to PC character sheets to make them easier to use just in general as a GM. So to go through how an NPC is broken down, you have hit dice, a number of hit dice, which is a pool of D8s used to dictate the HP and some other derived stats occasionally, depending. You have AC, which functions the same as as PCs. You have attack bonus, which is just what they use when they're attacking, when the NPC is attacking. And this represents their attributes, their skills, and any other bonuses added together. So NPCs don't have stats like a PC does. They don't have attributes and they don't have skills. You have your move and your damage. Those work the same as you'd expect. Then you have a morale score, which is basically once, I think it says when the first member of the enemy goes down and when they get to half their size in their group, you make a check against their morale score. If they roll higher, they stick around. If they roll lower, they fuck off or give up or whatever. And then NPC skills are a singular number, and you don't write out what skills an NPC has. You don't say, oh, they have fix 1 and command 2 and administer 1. You just give them a skill number. It's +1, +2, +3, whatever. And anytime you think that it makes sense for them to add their skill bonus, then you add it. So if you have an NPC who is the pilot, who is the ship mechanic, and the players ask that NPC to do something on the ship to fix it, and the mechanic has a +3, then you would add that +3 to the roll because he's the mechanic, so that would make sense. If the PCs ask him to go to the tax office and do some paperwork for them, he's not getting a bonus to that skill. He doesn't know how to do his taxes. For some reason.
I don't know how to do my tax.
Yeah, I mean, I guess no one does really in hindsight. other than the person you give it to.
Yep.
And then lastly, you have NPC saves. These work the same as PC saving throws, but they don't have 3 separate scores. They just have 1. So an NPC will just have save 14 plus. So all 3 of their saves use the same number. If they roll over 14, they pass. There's no split up. If you really, really want, for some reason, you may split it up if you feel like it's an important NPC where maybe that matters for some reason, but I wouldn't recommend it. Why bother? That's my take on that one.
Yeah, I agree.
So you will notice, I mean, Isaiah, you'll see because you're looking at the page. NPC stat blocks aren't really stat blocks. They're stat lines.
Yeah.
It is name of creature and then hit dice, AC, attack, damage, move, morale, skill, saves. There is no block of information with special abilities and powers and yada, yada, yada. And that's basically because this game generally assumes, you know, if you're running into just people, they don't have, you know, the local police don't have special abilities. They just have energy pistols. So you just give them an energy pistol and then they attack. If for some reason you need NPCs to have special powers, like it's an alien with a weird ability or a human who's like a cyber ninja and is super cool and skilled or whatever, you can just take PC focuses and slap them onto the NPCs, or just any PC abilities and just add them to it. And you don't need to worry about like building the NPC correctly. If it would be cool for them to have the thing, give them the thing. That's it.
Does the game actually tell you to do that, or is that like more of an inference you're making?
No, the game tells you.
Okay.
I don't remember how the game words it, but it does mention it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then after humans, we have robots and VI, which is to say virtual intelligence. You get a brief little descriptor on expert bots. Expert bot systems are really simple robots with a singular core function that they try to carry out as much as they can. So the scene where you talk to the janitor robot and it's like, all I do is clean. I love cleaning. That's an expert system bot. It just does its job. There is a very basic table of a couple of very basic, it's just a level layout. So it's like, what level is the expert bot? And then that determines its hit dice, its attack, its skill, its save, etc., etc. The one thing that's really funny about expert bots is if you try to ask the expert bot to do something it's not designed to do, they have to make a confusion check.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So like you roll 2d6 and then adding its skill bonus against a difficulty based on the strangeness of the situation. A situation partly within its usual compass might be DC 7, while a completely uncovered event would be DC 9, and a situation that is both completely uncovered and clearly dangerous would be DC 11. So
what happens if you just walk up to one and go, divide by 0? Do they just explode? Do they just go, wait, what? No.
They probably wouldn't even try.
It just looks at you and goes, no.
No. It's more like if you walked up to the janitor bot and then told it to like strap a bomb to itself and blow up the door. The janitor bot is not going to know how to do that. It's not made for that.
What if you just start telling it to do really stupid shit? You're just like, do a backflip. I don't care how. Do a backflip.
I am incapable of doing backflips.
It's like, I do not have legs. I have treads. Like, do a backflip, gun tank. Do a backflip.
Do a backflip.
What is a gun tank?
And then there's some quick rules about fixing them, obviously. And then we have virtual intelligences, which is not quite AI, but smarter than the expert system bots. So if you want a good example, the hologram lady that you talk to on the Citadel in Mass Effect is a virtual intelligence. she can sort of pretend like she has emotions and respond, but like not really.
I was curious about the virtual intelligence thing. That is Mass Effect, right? That's where that got coined.
I don't think so.
VI is a thing. It might be Halo. VI is a coined thing in a sci-fi series, and I was wondering if they were getting it from that because yeah, like the difference between VI and AI, to those of you who don't know, is that an AI is artificial intelligence. It is self-learning. It's self-perpetuating. It has a personality for all intents and purposes. VI is Siri. It can answer questions. It can sort of collate responses based on what you say and how you respond. It can
sort of pretend like it has an opinion.
Yeah, but it can't learn other than through like the direct stimulus that you give
it. Basic machine learning it can do.
Yeah.
So yeah, the VI, basically the VI section, you get some lore guidelines and some background on, you know, on what VIs are. They're between the simplicity of the expert system and the godlike intelligence of a true AI. We get a couple of sample VI stat blocks. So a janitor bot, a repair bot, a work bot, you know, a soldier bot, a war bot. VIs are your more traditional robots, whereas expert systems are like the software built into the camera system or whatever would be like an expert system.
I was right, by the way. It is Mass Effect.
That's where it comes from?
Not that where it comes from, but where I heard it before.
Oh, that's probably where you heard it, yeah. And then there's a little half-page spread on just generally how to handle VI in your campaign and like how ubiquitous do you want robots to be and like do you want them to do X, Y, or Z thing, or you know, some stuff like that. And then a quick page on if you want to be a VI PC, because that is a thing you could do. If the player allows, you could play a VI. You have a couple of special rules that dictate you, such as lacking the need to eat, sleep, or drink, and immunity to disease and poisons. There's some more other special rules. Those are just some examples. And then basically you just take an origin focus at character creation to represent that you aren't a normal human. So you can either be an android, a VI worker bot, or a VI vehicle bot. Yes, that means you can play a car, if you're wondering.
That's amazing.
Yeah. That is literally what the VI vehicle bot is. So, yeah.
You know, I'm kind of wishing I had read a little more deeply into this because I kind of love that.
Told you. And then you get beasts. Beasts is just kind of a catch-all term, right? Alien shit or just, you know, big animals or whatever. Animals. It's some guidance on like, there's some tables that'll help you like stylize your beast and make them, you know, cool. Which is to say, there's what kind of animal features do they have? What kind of body do they have? Are they a predator? What's their behavioral tracks like? Are they scavengers? What do they do there? You know, more tables. So many tables.
More tables.
Yeah. And there's also some basic kind of generic beast stat lines. So you have like small vicious beast, small pack hunter, large aggressive prey animal, lesser lone predator. Again, none of the stat blocks you get in this game are going to be like complicated. They're all going to be simple stat lines like that.
I'm a particular fan of terrifying apex predator.
Yeah. And then we have the aliens chapter. This is kind of sort of, this is like mostly a lore sort of chapter. It discusses like how to create aliens species for your game. And it gives you a bunch, again, more tables to assist you in doing so. And then it talks about you have your two main alien categories, which the game describes as like type aliens and other type aliens. Like type aliens are mostly human. They're the sort of aliens we mostly see in Star Wars and like Star Trek, which is to say, you know, they're bipedal human-shaped creatures, but their skin is blue and they have glowy eyes, or they have a bumpy forehead, or fish fins, or shit like that. Those are your like type aliens. And then other type aliens are shit that is hard to understand and shares no resemblance to humans at all. So something like sentient light or a hive mind of fungus aliens would be like other type aliens. Like there's just no comparison to any kind of human or animal that you could make reasonably.
So this is interesting because this reminds me of like the game I was talking to you about before we started recording, Wildsea, because there's a race of people in Wildsea that are a sentient hive mind of spiders. That's
horrifying.
Well, so it gets even more horrifying because they wear humanoid skin that they purchase from the other races. So like if you die, you get like, you can pay to have your skin flayed from your body and then made into a skin suit for the spider swarm people. Yeah. Completely above board. Like completely legally allowed.
All right. That's awful.
It is your every Cronenberg nightmare brought to life and made into a player character race.
Jesus. I mean, I want to play one because that's horrifying.
Yeah, you also have like sentient cactuses.
Of course.
And
sure.
One of the, you literally get to play Cactuar, and then another one is you are a part of a ship, like you're like the hull and mast and idol of a ship that was destroyed, and because people cared about you so much, you developed sentience and turned into like a golem.
Yo, this game is wild, and what the fuck?
Yeah, I'll send you the video for it. It's nuts.
Okay. So yes, those would be other type aliens. Then you have a section guiding you on how to come up with like alien biology and a table to roll on and determine, general alien biology. Again, tables on tables on tables. And by biology, I mean like, are they reptilian? Are they insectile? Are they mammalian? Like that sort of a thing. The alien creation stuff focuses more on the like type aliens rather than the other type aliens, because the others are weird, incomprehensible beings, whereas the like type aliens are things that the players might interact with more. After that, the game talks a little bit about like the psychology you can use on aliens, and it talks about a system it calls lenses, like a glasses lens or a camera lens. Lenses are like two core social traits that the species has that is very clear and apparent to other species and is sort of like a defining trait. So the example it gives is a species focused on collectivity, and you roll two lenses for them. Collectivity and fear. So they're focused on like the collective of the people and are generally fearful of other species. And this is a D20 table that you roll on twice to determine the two lenses that you smash together. It's just a way to like flavor and focus your concept of what the species is around like a specific guiding principle, as it were. And then you get a quick little section on the social structures, which are described the same as human ones. So like there's a table that says, are they democratic, or they are monarchic, or are they tribal, right? Human social structures. Just stick them onto the alien species. And then a little section on how to handle alien tech levels. And they're just broadly how they exist and are viewed in the sector. Like, does everyone hate this species, or does everybody like the species? And what's their motivation in life? Do they want to conquer the galaxy, or are they cool just living in a space rock somewhere? And then the last little bit is how to play an alien PC. I did have one of these.
They were the sentient slime, right?
Or
Sentient
were they the like changeling?
galaxy thing.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Sentient galaxy being that turned into human shapes. It's a pretty simple system for alien PC. You literally just there's a list of traits on the page. You just combine two of the traits together, and then those two traits are the focus that the player takes at character creation. They have to take it as their origin focus, so they don't get the other level 1 focus that they would get if they were a human character. You know, it replaces it. And then we get to the final chunk, the bigger Gamuka, the Moby Dick,
Yeah.
I don't know. Give me something here. I don't know. Big Bertha.
The factions?
The factions.
Okay.
The faction system, baby. So, this is like the coolest GM tool in the entire game. It's super fun. It adds all sorts of sick shit to your game in general. Factions. So technically, the faction turn system is optional, but heavily encouraged. And it's a system where the GM pits the various factions of their sector against one another to see what the outcomes of their disputes are, and then use those outcomes to determine the campaign and inform this, or to not determine, to inform the campaign and setting broadly. You're not determining anything, actually. It's not meant to be like a well-balanced chess match against yourself. Instead, it's a tool in your prep toolbox where you can have unexpected outcomes that flourish that can change the flow of events for your game. A faction in the game can technically be any kind of group or organization, but basically the game recommends that they should be a group that's important enough to affect the sector in some way, and that the PCs might give a shit about that faction. So it could just be the faction is a group of bandits on an asteroid colony somewhere, but the players will probably interact with them like once, and they're probably not gonna affect sector politics very much unless they become really big all of a sudden. So it's like you generally want to pick and choose, and if it's the faction turn takes a little while to do, so it can very easily get out of hand if you put too many factions in the sector, because it will make your faction turn take fucking forever, and then you have to try and contextualize everything that happened during the faction turn. Because the basic idea is you determine all your factions, you have your factions. The factions go to war. Now, when I say war, I don't necessarily mean they literally are like in a hot war with each other. It could be espionage or like a cold war, or it could be a money war, right? They could be trying to buy each other out of existence. But the idea is they're in conflict, and you do the faction turn, and then based on what happened in the faction turn, you tell the PCs during the game what's going on in the sector. So, oh, this company destroyed or like bought out this other company on this planet, and so now this planet is significantly poorer and lost a bunch of business and workers or whatever. They got outsourced or some shit. And then the players hear that in the news. So how do we define the factions? So factions basically have stats. They have HP that represents their general group cohesion and leadership. They can take damage in various ways, like getting attacked by the other factions. They have a force rating. Your force rating is the faction's aptitude for like brute force methods. So a standing army or skilled military leadership of some kind is, representative of your force rating. You have your cunning rating, which is things like espionage, infiltration, internal security, etc. And then you have your wealth rating, which is how much fat cash you have to burn on things like research and industry. Now, your wealth rating is not the amount of money you have. It's more like how good are you at using your money.
Yeah, it's, oh God. What is it called in 40K? Your...
I don't know.
Yeah, so it 40K is a similar thing where it's like degrees of money. So when you play a game like Rogue Trader, when you want to buy a new gun, you don't have to spend money on that gun. You just need a certain wealth rating equal to what that gun is worth, and then you just get it.
Sort of, yeah. It's the way it works is like, so your wealth rating is how good you are at utilizing your industry as a faction. So you could have a wealth asset that has a special ability that, you know, shuts well, let me just grab an example. Wealth asset. Bank assets. Once per turn, the faction can ignore one cost or fact cred lost imposed by another faction. This does not require an action. Multiple bank assets allow multiple losses to be ignored. So your bank stores are so fat, you're just like, sir, we're running out of money. No, we're fine. Just call up the banks. You know, it's that kind of a thing. It's like wealth assets are manipulating like industry and money, but it's not the amount of money you have to spend per se. The amount of money you have to spend is your fact creds. That's how much wealth and resources you have. It's not only money though. It's also represents like logistics and supply lines. So it's not necessarily only that, oh, we have fat stacks of liquid assets. It could be that we supply all of the spaceship engines in the sector. So, you know, we're important, and that can also be represented by fact creds. And then factions can also accrue XP points because they can upgrade. Basically, a faction declares a goal, and if they complete their goal, they get XP. And then a faction has a homeworld. Homeworld is what it sounds like. It's important to mark your homeworld because actions can be hindered by distances from the homeworld, as well as you can only buy things. You might have to, like, you can't just buy things any old place. You might need to buy them on your homeworld or where you have a base of influence or something, you know, shit like that. So it's important to keep an eye on the homeworld. And then you have faction tags, and tags are like special abilities the factions get. They generally will have 1 or 2 tags. So then we go through, we have your assets themselves. So the faction's assets are, you know, they're like the weapons they use against each other. They can be things like military infantry, but they can also be infrastructure and manufacturing.
They literally have space marines as an asset.
They have space marines. They also have cyber
Heavily
ninjas.
Armored specialist troops trained for shipboarding actions and opposed landings. They have literally 40k space marines.
They also have cyber ninjas and psychic assassins.
I love this. I love this so much.
Yeah. So an asset has a minimum rating that you need to use it. So, you know, you can't, if the asset says you need to have force rating 3, reminder that the ratings are like the faction's stats. If you need to have force rating 3 and you go to buy, you want to buy that asset, no bitch. You're just not cool enough. Better force rating. Sorry. LOL. So for example, if you want to get cyber ninjas, you have to have cunning 3 at least.
Oh, okay.
Was that confusing at first?
Yeah.
Did I say that confusingly, perhaps?
I don't know why I wasn't getting it, but yeah, as you described it.
Yeah. So you have a minimum level your stat needs to be at.
Okay, so it is kind of like wealth then, yeah.
Sort of, but again, the fact trade, yes, but remember that the fact creds are the thing that literally gets spent.
Right. So there is actually a spending of.
There is also a monetary thing to spend.
Gotcha.
Each of the assets, they have HP, like a faction does, because when you attack a faction, you don't attack the faction, you attack an asset. Every asset has a purchase cost that they cost in fact creds.
By the way, can I just say I hate the word fact cred.
Faction creds, faction
I hate
credits.
that. I hate them. That's such a. Oh, I don't like that word.
Fair enough. Fact creds will generally be like on, a single digit scale. It's not like thousands of dollars. It'll say like you have 5 fact creds. Like 5 would be quite a bit. Some, but not all of the factions have an attack, which determines which rating they use when they attack and the HP damage that they do. Some assets have counterattacks, which is to say, if you attack an asset and you fail the attack, you then get hit with a counterattack, but not always. Depends on, it has to have a counterattack line for that. All of the assets have a typing, such as like military or facility or ship, which is, what it sounds like. That matters because you might need something to build, like starships, for example, can only be built on planets that have a certain population rating. And then, and as an example, the way the attack part works. So if you look at, let's just use Cyber Ninjas again. If you attack something with Cyber Ninjas, you roll cunning versus the opponent's cunning, and then you do 2d6 damage. The Cyber Ninjas do not have a counterattack, so if you try to attack Cyber Ninjas and fail, they don't hit you, they don't retaliate in any way. And then, where was I? Oh, the location of the asset is determined by where it was purchased. An asset cannot hit a location that it is not at. You have to move it for it to be able to, you cannot have Cyber Ninjas attack a planet that they are not physically on. You have to get them to the planet.
Right.
And then they have a minimum tech level requirement because a TL2 planet with muskets cannot acquire Cyber Ninjas, for example. And a faction cannot have more assets of a particular rating than they have in that rating. So if you have Force rating 3, you can only have 3 Force assets. Just, a limit. So once the actual turn begins, either once per month in game or after an adventure, whichever you want to use, it's kind of up to you. You roll a die to decide which faction goes first. So if you have 6 factions, you would roll a d6, and then you just, after that first roll, you go down the line. At the start of a turn, a faction gains fact creds equal to half their wealth plus a quarter of their force and cunning rating. So you get some money, then you have to pay maintenance, and you cannot refuse maintenance. If you cannot pay maintenance on a particular asset, the asset is disabled. If you fail to pay maintenance 2 turns in a row, the asset is destroyed. So important that the faction have, the right. They need to be able to afford their shit.
Right.
And if a faction starts a turn without a goal, they have to determine if they have to declare a new goal. During a turn, you can take 1 action, but you can apply that action to as many worlds as you want. So for example, if you were to choose the attack action and you had infantry on 3 different planets, you can attack all 3 planets. Because it's 1 action, but your assets are in multiple places. And then lastly, whatever happens out, with the turn, PCs can always fuck with the turn, with the faction turn and a faction's assets. So if a faction has a factory asset of some kind and the PCs go on an adventure and blow the factory to pieces, the faction can't do anything. They just don't have that asset anymore. It's just gone. Because, fucking player characters.
Just fucking everything up for everybody.
Just always fucking shit up. So then there is a page that tells you, so I'll just real briefly, these are dense, so I'm not going to explain them all. You have your actions, you have attack, which is what it sounds like. You send one asset to attack another asset. If the asset goes to 0 HP, it's gone. You can purchase an asset, but you can only ever purchase an asset on your home world or a world where you have a base of influence. A base of influence is a special kind of asset that basically declares, it's a military base on another planet type situation. So you can be like, I have a base of influence here, ergo I can get cyber ninjas on this planet. The faction can change their homeworld. This takes a turn, and this takes a number of turns equal to 1 plus the number of hexes they move. And they can't do anything else when they're moving their homeworld, because obviously that's a lot of work. There's the expand influence action, which is where you put a base of influence on another planet. This is not free; it can be resisted, but you expand your influence and place it elsewhere. You can refit an asset, which is to say swap one asset for another asset and pay the difference. You can repair an asset or repair your faction, which is, you can heal HP. You can sell an asset and gain half the fact creds you spent on it back. You can seize a planet, which is to say, you seize a planet. This is mine now, bitch.
Yeah.
If you seize a planet, you gain the planetary government tag for that world, which is relevant because the planetary government tag is what, if you want to try and put an asset on a certain planet, but there's another planetary government, you have to have permission to place that asset. So the faction cannot just expand out and then put space, you can't just throw infantry on a planet nearby and just be like, I'm just gonna let my guys with guns just chill here. That's fine, right? No.
Probably not gonna go over, but.
No. And then you can use an asset's special ability. Not all of them have special abilities, but many of them do have special abilities to do various different things. Then in terms of actually buying and utilizing the assets, I feel like buying should have been before. Anyway, whatever. You have to have a base of influence to purchase a thing. Starship assets, like I said, require a population of several 100,000 to actually be made because you don't have the infrastructure to make ships if you don't have enough people. Certain assets require permission. It is worth pointing out, certain assets require permission, not all assets. Like for example, let's see, do cyber ninjas do not require permission because they're stealthy,
Right.
So you can
kill them motherfuckers.
Yeah. So you can slide some cyber ninjas into your homeboy's backyard.
I like that you really like the cyber ninjas.
I'm just using them as a point of reference now, so
Fair
it just
enough.
works. Bases of influence. So a base of influence, like I said, is a special kind of asset that requires you to be. It has to be on the planet for you to get assets on that planet. You can only have one base of influence per planet, and you can't purchase a base of influence you have to use the expand influence action to place a base of influence. And you cannot sell a base of influence. It has no sale value. You can't make the money back in any way. You can't make money back on it. The cost of the asset is equal to how much HP it has. So if it's a base of influence with 10 HP, it costs 10. And it can have as much HP as the faction maximum's HP. So if the faction has 20 HP, the base of influence can have up to 20. The important thing is, you might say, why does it matter how much? Wouldn't you just always give the base of influence the highest amount of health? No, because damage done to a base of influence does that amount of damage to the entire faction. But overflow damage doesn't roll over to the faction. So if the base of influence has 5 HP and a faction attacks it for 10 damage, the faction that had the base takes 5 damage for the base. They don't take 10 damage, right? It stops at whatever the base was at. So if you put too much into a singular base of influence, that one base could take out and destroy your whole faction. Subsequently, if you spread all of your bases of influences all over the place really, really thin, then someone could just systematically take them out and your faction falls apart because you spread yourself too thin. So, no, you don't necessarily want to just give them the highest HP possible. Again, reminder, you're playing this game against yourself when you do the faction turn. So if you want to have a faction that's stupid and does something like that just because narratively it makes sense, then obviously you can. You're not hurting anybody.
Right. Keep saying the word right, because I just don't. There's nothing else to say.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm explaining the thing. And obviously a faction's homeworld automatically has a base of influence with maximum possible HP, because that's the home base. And then you have your faction goals. A goal is just what the faction is trying to do. When they complete the goal, they acquire XP equal to the difficulty of the goal. So for example, military conquest. Destroy a number of force assets of a rival faction equal to your faction's force rating. And the difficulty is half the number of assets destroyed. So if you destroy 4 force assets, you would get 2 XP for that goal. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 11 faction goals. And you can come up with your own too if you want. But honestly, the 11 that are here, from my experience, did the job. Military conquest, commercial expansion, intelligence coup, planetary seizure, expanding influence, blood of the enemy, so on and so forth. And then there is a XP chart for how much XP it costs for a faction to increase a stat. You increase ratings, you spend XP to increase rating. The factions don't have levels. So you spend the XP goes away, your stat goes up. It's not like PCs where the XP accrues over time. You spend XP like money. So it does go away and reset. And then the faction tags are the last big thing. And like I said, you usually have 1, 2 if it's a larger organization. And the tags are special abilities. And the only one that's slightly different is planetary government, which you can get multiple times because every planet that you have, you get the planetary government tag on that planet. But just to pick out one as an example, one of them is Machiavellian. And Machiavellian is once per turn, this faction can roll an additional D10 when they make a cunning attack. So it's that sort of thing. They're like special buffs that the faction has Pirate, if they're a pirate faction, any movement of an asset onto a world that has a base of influence for this faction costs 1 extra fact cred paid to this faction. So it's harder to go onto a pirate planet because yar har, pay me the tax. Or whatever. And of course, there is a big list of force, wealth, and cunning assets. I don't know how many there are, but they are, it's pretty big lists. Like 70% of the page is the table with all the assets.
There's a lot of assets. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what the count is, but I assure you it is a chunky amount.
More than I'm willing to count.
Exactly. And then a quick breakdown on just using factions in your campaign, just how to set them up, how to make them, you know, what to do with them. And then a very brief bit on creating a PC faction that is unfortunately so brief it's not very useful. One of the few places where the game kind of leaves you hanging, unfortunately. And then a couple of example factions that you could take if you wanted, of course. That's the and an example of faction play broken down into 3 separate turns. That's the faction turn system. I know I glazed over it very quickly, but there's a lot to it, so I didn't want to spend every little detail explaining every little minutia of this number and that number and so on and so forth.
I mean, it's fine. Like you said, it's a huge.
It's system. A big important chunk. It's a pretty big system. I think it's really important. Like I said, it's technically an optional system, but like, I feel like if you're playing this game without the faction turn, you are really missing out.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
Big missing out.
This game is sort of hearkening to the space opera. You need the opera with space.
Right, exactly. And the faction turn is just fun because between sessions, you sit down by yourself and you just play, you know, funny board game with yourself to see, ooh, the Jimmy Bobs are going to hit the Dingly Dobs. Ooh, that's cool. Oh, let's see what happens. Ooh, they critical hit. Oh, they did a lot of damage. You know, it's just fun to like do that little thing. And because you're not playing against someone, you're not invested in the results. So whatever happens, you go, oh, that's interesting. And then you just not jot it down, you know?
Yeah.
So, that is where we are going to end things. Now, that is not actually the end of the book. There is more to this book, which I know you might be thinking, Jesus Christ, how is there more to this book? There's
a lot.
The faction chapter is basically the end of the core system. Everything after it, I don't know about the GM resources chapter. That might be in the free version, but all of the without number games have a free version of them, and the free version has everything you need to play a standard campaign. The deluxe edition, which is just the one you pay for, has extra rules for more shit. So the free version, I believe for stars, stops at the faction turn chunk. The subsequent chapters, just to tell you very quickly, and I would in fact consider this a sales pitch for the game. If you want to know what's in these other chapters, go buy the book. Boom, bang, boom. The other chapters are the GM, the Game Master Resources chapter, which is basically it's a sort of GM advice column on how the designer thinks you should run the game, how to handle different aspects of the game like death or skill checks, negotiations, how to handle combat, stuff like that. Interstellar trade, which I think is funny that got its own little bit. There's a page on converting from the first edition of Stars Without Number, which I think is kind of funny that it's in there, but it's in there if you want it. As well as some suggested house rules for you to fuck around with if you want, such as using plot points or boosting starting levels, you know, common house rules. And then the important thing in the GM chapter, though, is massive D100 name tables, NPC name generators. Cool, baby. That's some good shit. And they're broken up.
So many.
Yeah, they're broken up by like real world ethnicities. So you have a table of Arabic names, Chinese names, English names, Greek names, Indian names, Japanese names, Latin names, Nigerian names. Nigerian's a crazy one. Russian names, Spanish names. You get the idea. As well as some tables on what the game calls one roll NPCs, which is basically you roll on a bunch of tables to come up with an NPC on the fly. You just bang, 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 bust out the rolls. After the GM chapter, there's the transhuman campaign chapter. I don't even really fully know how to describe it. I don't even remember if I fully read this chapter the first time I played, but basically, if you want to play like a super, like beyond Star Trek level utopia hyper sci-fi game, the transhuman campaign is that. It's where like humans have moved beyond their mortal flesh and exist as like data, and they don't use money anymore, and technology is like crazy advanced and all this shit. It's a whole chapter on how to play that style of campaign with its own custom rules too. It's not just advice. It has custom rules and custom monetary values, even though it doesn't use money in the traditional sense. But yeah. Then there's a chapter on space magic, which is not what you think it is. Necessarily. Basically, it's telling you how to take spell casting from old editions of D&D and port it into this game. After the space magic, there's a chapter on playing heroic characters, which is basically just you design PCs that are way stronger than the base game PCs if you want to play something a little more D&D-esque where combat is not as deadly and the PCs are way cooler, you know? Which I'm sure is a chapter a lot of people appreciate. Then there's a whole chapter on true artificial intelligences and playing a AI PC. And playing a PC true AI character is not like the VI thing where you just like take a focus or whatever. No. It has its own character design rules and its own like special rules to dictate how to play it. So it plays completely different from every other thing in the game.
Of course it does.
Yeah. And then there's a big societies chapter, which is just lots of like tables and advice on how to design different types of societies. And then the big one that Isaiah, I'm sure, really wants to look at, but probably hasn't yet, is the last chapter is mechs. How to play mechs. Look at it. Yeah. Again, there's quite a bit in there. I don't even think I've looked at the mech chapter at all to my memory. So yeah. But yes, if you want to play sick mech pilot game, you can. That's Stars Without Number, sorta. It's a good chunk of Stars Without Number.
It is a solid chunk of it.
Solid chunk of it in this 300-page book. That is 300 doesn't sound like that much more than other RPGs, but shit's dance.
It is.
But I still love this game, so I don't care. I love this game and all of its children, which is to say the subsequent Without Number games. Thank you for listening to this long-winded ramblings. I thought I was gonna get through this a little faster. I did not. There's just too much game.
Yeah, I had a feeling. There's a lot of game. I was not confident we were gonna finish this, but I was like, fuck it, we'll give it a shot.
I mean, we got to as far as I wanted to get, more or less. So,
Fair.
But yes, if you enjoyed this long-winded rambling about an RPG game, you probably an RPG game, a role-playing game about an RPG that you probably haven't heard of. There you go. Thank you. If you like this, perhaps leave a rating or a like, depending on your platform of choice. That'd be nice. Or a comment telling us how cool we are. That'd also be nice. Would you agree?
Yeah, I'd say so. I feel bad. I'm so used to not talking this episode because it's just me being like, Now I just feel kind of bad.
I mean, it's fine. Shout at the people. Tell them goodbye.
Peace, motherfuckers.
It wasn't really a shout.